Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. It is my pleasure to welcome on the show Evan Spiegel, the co-founder of Snap Inc. Evan, thanks very much for joining us here in India on the Global Dialogue. It's great to have you.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
The India visit is via Bhutan. Any specific reason why you decided to do Bhutan before you did India? And that's a country that values happiness over everything else. Is that your state of mind today?
That was certainly one of the inspirations. Bhutan has an incredible commitment to well-being and to happiness, and changed the way that they measure that in their country to really put an emphasis on it. And that's something that really inspired me. So when they invited me to the Innovation Forum, the first Bhutan Innovation Forum, I just had to go check it out myself.
And you come back feeling like there's something that you want to reframe in your life or at work?
Well, it's just unbelievably inspiring. I mean, the kindness of the Bhutanese people was really just impressive to me. And it's a country, I was joking while I was there, they're sort of squeezed between India and China, and I feel we're squeezed between Meta and Google, so we can relate.
You can relate to what they go through. But you're talking about this competitive landscape, and it hasn't been an easy last few years for you, though things are starting to turn a corner, specifically in 2024. How confident do you feel about the road ahead? How confident do you feel about the road back to profitability for you?
Yeah, I'm so excited about the progress we've been making in our business. Here in India, we reach nearly 250 million people, and I've been so excited to see the growth of the team. Just over the last year, the team in India has doubled, and we've really focused on supporting the growth of the creator ecosystem, all of the augmented reality development that's happening here, and of course, our advertising business as well. So it's been really exciting to see the momentum here in India and around the world, where we reach more than 850 million people now.
So India is an important market, not just for you, but for Meta, for Google. I mean, this is a large market for YouTube. It's a large market for Instagram. Given the behemoths that you're up against and operating between, as you pointed out, what is the India strategy going to be? How differently do you address this market? It is, of course, a young demographic that plays to your strength and your advantage. How do you play India differently?
Well, India is full of so many young, creative people, and I think we really view our role as supporting the creativity of the Indian people. Snapchat's always played a unique role because what we found early on was that text messaging and messaging apps are kind of boring. It's hard to communicate how you feel through text. But on the other hand, social media has a lot of social pressure and social comparison with public likes and comments. And so Snapchat, I think, plays a unique role because it's visual communication and it's focused on friends and family. So there isn't that public pressure of having to look pretty and perfect on social media. And I think that's a sweet spot that's really been well received here in India, and that's why we reach so many folks here. So I think the strategy in India has really just been to support the creativity and the innovation of the Indian people, and given how many young people there are here in India, I think that's really gotten us off to a strong start.
I'll come back to India in a second, but let's talk about Snap globally as well. It's been quite a journey over the last 13 years of your existence, and there have at many points been an existential question or an existential crisis even as far as Snap is concerned, and you have made pivots along the way. As you look at the future, as you look at the next decade, for instance, what do you see yourself? I mean, what will drive Snap in the future?
I think at our core, ever since we founded the business, we've been focused on enhancing people's relationships with one another, with their friends and family, and also with the world. And at first we did that with visual messaging, but now we're very focused on augmented reality. And as we look to the future, we see augmented reality glasses being the new way that people will want to engage with computing, because it keeps people grounded in the real world so that they can actually share experiences together with their friends. I joke around with my wife and I say, imagine, we look out the window, we've got 4 boys at home, and you see the kids running around outside playing and laughing, and you're like, gosh, they just won't get off the darn computer. So there's this vision for the world where computing actually brings us together outside playing with our friends and family.
So you replace the iPads and the laptops and the computer screen with glasses, but essentially you're moving from one device to the next, right?
I think computing plays such an important role in people's lives. It's such a great tool for creativity and for connection, but I think today people often feel that screens are getting in the way. They're actually preventing them from interacting with their friends, or people are stuck behind their desktop inside rather than outside in the world. And so I think what we have to do is work towards a world where we get the benefits of computing, but we can use computers in a way that bring us together, hopefully outside in shared experiences.
I just tried on the glasses, so it was pretty cool to experience what they can do. But You know, it's not the first time that we've experimented with this kind of technology, and I would imagine that we're going to see many iterations of this. But when do you believe we're likely to see this take off from a consumer's point of view? I mean, when does it become the inflection point as far as the use and the adoption of this is concerned?
I think certainly by the end of the decade. So we're getting quite close. I mean, we've been working on glasses, I think, for about 10 years now at Snap, and there were a lot of fundamental technical hurdles that we had to overcome in terms of the display system, what we call the optical engine that connects the glasses and the glass piece of the lens with the projector system, and of course everything we've had to do to design the Snap operating system to work across 2 processors and really distribute heat and power effectively in the glasses. I think the form factor, you probably experienced this, it's still a little heavy,
yes,
a little big, but I think...
And didn't fit my head quite right, which I was told was unusual because it hasn't happened anywhere else, apparently.
Well, I think those are the sorts of form factor issues that will be addressed in future iterations, and our strategy has been to just get the glasses in the hands of developers today so that they can start building for spectacles, so that when consumers adopt them, there are all sorts of amazing experiences that people, you know, can try when they use the glasses.
So it's still like a 10-year project that we're talking about.
Well, it's been 10 years already. I think,
and another 10 years before you actually start to make money off of it.
Oh, hopefully sooner than that. Hopefully sooner than that.
No, but what's the realistic timeline?
I think by 2030 we'll see widespread consumer adoption of AR glasses, and I think they're closer than folks think. I mean, oftentimes we always say in technology, you know, change happens more slowly in the short term, but then quite quickly over the long term. And so while I think the progress has been quite slow over the last 10 years, as I look at the next 10 and the future of AR glasses, I think that the changes are going to be quite rapid and consumer adoption should follow.
You know, you talked about rapid changes, and you're absolutely right. I don't think that anyone would have imagined that ChatGPT would have the kind of explosive moment that it had a couple of years ago, and today it's sort of everything that everyone talks about. When we talk about AI in specific, what kind of investments are you expected to make on that front in terms of collaborations? You've already got a collaboration with OpenAI. What more do you see on that front, given the opportunities that you foresee?
There's so much opportunity with generative AI. It's certainly something we're thinking a lot about, definitely in terms of the chatbot that we introduced together with OpenAI, but increasingly with images and videos. So if you look at the history of our augmented reality business, a lot of those AR lenses were, you know, built in Lens Studio, involved generating a lot of 3D assets by hand. And as we look towards the future, not only do I think those 3D assets, you know, will be generated by artificial intelligence, but the entire lens authoring process and ultimately the rendering of the lens will be driven by AI as well. So I think we're at a really exciting moment, not just in terms of the way AI is being applied to chat, for example, but also to camera and to video in the future.
You know, and this brings me to something that I watched just yesterday, actually. Ben Affleck talking about what AI could potentially do to the movie business. And, you know, is it going to disrupt the movie business? Is AI going to take over? And he was very clear, no, it's not going to happen, not anytime soon anyway. It certainly is going to bring down the time for people to get the product out in the market, a movie out into the market, turn around, and so on and so forth. But it's not going to be able to do away with real actors, directors, and so on and so forth. What's your take on how disruptive it's likely to be for the content space, for the visual media space in the near term?
Well, AI is definitely not replacing Ben Affleck anytime soon. I think you know, as we look at the opportunity for AI and for these technical tools in general, I think what we've seen is just a huge democratization of creativity. And at Snap, we really believe that everybody is born creative, that creativity lives inside of all of us. But I think over time, whether it's through fear or because we don't necessarily have the tools to express ourselves, that creativity can be suppressed. And what we've always seen at Snapchat is when we provide creative tools to our community, whether it's simple, you know, AR lenses or now some of our more advanced AI editing tools, that sort of creativity is really unleashed. And so looking at the future of AI, I think the most exciting thing is that people everywhere will be able to truly express their creativity.
So what do you see Snap being at the core over the next decade? I mean, you know, do you morph from being a social media platform to becoming much more of a product-oriented platform? I mean, how do you see your transition and what shape it's likely to take?
Yeah, I think for us, we're evolving from being primarily a communication service to a more comprehensive computing platform. And you're already seeing some green shoots of that in the app itself, whether it's things like our map, where you can see, you know, where your friends are, what they're doing, of course, all the interesting places around you, or, you know, things like our augmented reality platform, and of course, content discovery with Spotlight. The service has diversified in so many different ways over the years, but really still driven by that core communication service. And looking looking at the future in terms of augmented reality and the Snap OS, I think we're going to bring a lot of those strengths in communication and the hundreds of millions of people that love using our service to stay close with their friends and family, and help them do that with this really powerful technology through AR glasses.
So, you talk about the fact that commerce is now social, and that is something that you're betting on as far as Snap is concerned. We're also talking about a young demographic, and that's the demographic that you play with. And Snap recently put together a report on the kind of consumption as well as the consumption behavior of Gen Z here in India in specific. How do you play to that market? How do you cater to that consumer? How do you cater to brands who are trying to target that consumer?
I think there are a couple things that have really jumped out for us as we've seen sort of the Gen Z behaviors here in India. I think the first is that it's very visual, and I think that plays to our strengths as a communications company that opens to the camera, that helps people communicate visually. We've also seen that authenticity really matters. And I think that, of course, applies to people communicating with their friends, but also the way that they're engaging with creators and brands. And what we see on Snapchat is that people want to build a deeper relationship with creators. They're not just focused on the number of followers, for example, but we have a feature called Story Replies, where people can message a creator, receive a response, and sometimes the creators even post that response to their story. And I think that helps deepen the engagement that people have and really creates loyalty around creators, which then I think plays an important role for brands who partner together with creators to help reach the Snapchat audience. And I think that relationship that people have with creators on Snapchat helps them get to know new products and services in a much more authentic way.
You said that 2024 is turning out to be a year that you feel confident about, and it could perhaps be the turnaround year. You've gone through a difficult last few years. You've restructured quite significantly. You've had a large layoff between 2021 and 2023. Is that now a thing of the past, or do you think that you will need to do more on that front? Have you been able to achieve the cost efficiencies that you were hoping to drive?
Yeah, we've really tried to strike the right balance between investing over the long term and then, of course, driving more near-term profitability, which is important, especially in this higher interest rate environment. So I think we've managed to set up the business for long-term success, of course, generate more than enough cash to cover our operation.
Yeah, the balance sheet's healthy.
Yeah, indeed. But again, we've really tried to be thoughtful, because I think as we look at these long-term investments, especially in things like augmented reality, it's the consistency that really matters. And so being able to consistently invest over 10 years instead of worrying about the ups and downs of the stock market has, I think, contributed to, to really our position here in the long term.
We're in conversation with Snapchat's co-founder, Evan Spiegel, on the road ahead for the business in India and globally. We will take a break here on the Global Dialogue and return with a lot more. Welcome back. You're watching the Global Dialogue. We're talking about Snapchat and its future in India with Evan Spiegel, the co-founder. You've seen some fairly calamitous ups and downs as far as your stock is concerned. How do you deal with that? What's the coping mechanism? What do you tell your team, on a day when you see the stock crash particularly? And also to other founders, and we're seeing now in India a whole host of startups that have listed and are going through this kind of volatility themselves. What's your take on dealing with this volatility?
I think what's so important is that the team stay focused on what really matters, and that for us is our community. So to be able to grow the business to more than 850 million people using our service all around the world, and to see them engage across all of our products, chatting with their friends or watching content using augmented reality, those are the sorts of input metrics that really matter. And that's what's enabled us to build products that serve advertisers and their goals and to really help them drive business impact. So I think as long as the team stays focused on what really matters over the long term, the stock price should take care of itself.
No, but for you personally, I mean, you created headlines as one of the youngest billionaires in the world and so on and so forth. And when you then see your personal market cap, so to speak, fall, how do you deal with that? I mean, or do you now look at success and performance differently, having gone through this?
Oh, I think I've always just evaluated my own contributions to the world in terms of building services that people really love. And that's what matters to me. That's what's, enriching to me, of course, in addition to my relationships with my friends and, of course, my family. But I think for me, just, to be able to have this opportunity to build a business like Snap and to be able to innovate, that's what gets me up in the morning and gets me really excited.
Well, some of the risks that you probably are going to have to deal with, not just here in India but globally as well, and I think tech platforms are grappling with what is to come. I mean, we've just seen what Australia has proposed to do with the legislation to ban social media effectively for those under 16. You have parental consent, of course, in the US for under 13, and countries like France, etc., are also talking about making things a lot harder for children to be able to access social media companies. What does that mean for the future for companies like yours?
I think it means we need to be really clear about how different Snapchat is. And that's been supported by the data and independent research just out this year, actually from Australia, that showed that Snapchat does not have the negative mental health impacts that other platforms like TikTok and Instagram do. And so I think, in the lead up to some of the decision making that happened in Australia, there was quite a lot of focus on research about how these platforms actually work and how they're different. And Snapchat yet again distinguished itself as a platform that makes a positive impact. There was also research out recently in the Netherlands that showed Snapchat's positive impact on well-being and people's relationships.
What are you doing differently?
Well, I think some of the early principles on Snapchat, like the focus on close friends and family, people adding each other to communicate, our content moderation, for example, and our content guidelines, I think, have made sure that we minimize the effects of harmful content or disinformation. We don't have a public friends list, for example, so it's much harder for people to discover who your friends might be and harass you by contacting your friends. And so I think the private nature of Snapchat as a service, the content moderation that we undertake in terms of our content platform, and of course the tools that we provide to help people communicate with their friends and family, those really contribute to a positive experience. And we see in the research that your relationships with your friends are actually some of the most important predictors of positive mental health outcomes. And so I think we need to continue to make the case for the positive impact that technology can play, and of course continue to differentiate ourselves from services that do have a measurable negative mental health impact. And as a result, I understand why folks are concerned about those services, but we want to make sure they don't lump us in because Snapchat
but
is
isn't
different.
that a fear that you will be lumped in, even though the research may show otherwise? Because, I mean, it's going to be hard for regulators as well as for governments and policymakers to kind of silo this or do carve-outs specifically for some and not for others.
I certainly think that's a concern, but we're here for the long term, and I think we need to continue to build products that make people's lives better. And, I think some of the things like the independent research that's come out recently really validate that approach. So, we're strong proponents of thoughtful regulation here, and as we look over the long term, I think people will continue to understand the different role that Snapchat plays in people's lives.
Well, speaking of regulation, and, again, something that, a debate that the communications minister has started here in India, and again, we're seeing global examples of this play out, Australia in specific, where they're saying that, look, social media platforms or technology platforms must share revenue with traditional broadcasters or traditional content generators. Your take on that?
Well, we were leaders there because we've been sharing revenue with content creators since we launched the Discover content platform. And so I do think that it's really important that creators are able to share in the success of the content that they create, and whether they're large publishers or creators that are just getting started, we revenue share with our content partners. I believe last year or maybe this year we paid out close to $500 million to content creators. And so that is a really important part of how we think about growing our business, because it's something we want to do together with content creators.
So what do you see as the key risks today to business? And I'll ask you this in the context of your opening statement of being squeezed between Meta and Google. And we haven't even talked about TikTok yet. And of course, 2025 could be a seminal moment for TikTok. Whether it ceases to exist in its current avatar in the US or not, we don't know. But do you see that as an opportunity for yourself?
I think for us, we need to stay focused on what really matters to our community, which is connecting with their close friends and family. And I think that's why people love Snapchat, and we see over and over again the way that we can play a positive role in supporting people's relationships with one another. So while there's always going to be competition and folks innovating, as long as we stay true to our core and the value we provide in people's lives, I think that's going to be the key to growing our business.
And staying independent is key to you as well?
I think it's certainly
they have come calling, and repeatedly so, but not willing to take the offer?
Well, I think it's been really important to maintaining our vision. As I mentioned, things like our focus on privacy, our focus on content moderation, creating a positive experience on Snapchat, those are things that are really different than what the industry has been doing. And so I think for us, we were always concerned that if we sold our business, for example, we'd have to compromise on that vision and compromise on a product that we know makes a positive impact in people's lives in terms of their well-being and their relationships. And that's just not something we want to compromise on.
Are they still calling?
Well, you know, I can't talk about that publicly, but I think what we have shared is our commitment to our long-term vision and to building a product that people really love and makes a positive impact in their lives.
Well, you know, Evan, let me ask you this. As you look at the landscape today, and, you know, we're talking about the era of AI. Now, everybody wants to be an AI-led or an AI-powered company. How do you see that changing the positioning of companies like yours? How do you see that also perhaps further diversifying revenue streams, which is a large part of what you're focused on today?
AI has always played a really important role in our platform. First, you know, in terms of our recommendation systems, for example, in terms of the content that we recommend, of course, the augmented reality experiences we recommend. But increasingly, we do see new opportunities in generative AI, and we've really wanted to embrace those, whether it's like the chatbot I mentioned or some of the new augmented reality experiences that are powered by generative AI that you couldn't accomplish with just a normal lens. So I do think generative AI is going to create all sorts of incredible opportunities, and I think we're well positioned to continue to invest there.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in the U.S. at this point in time. And I remember you did a podcast for the BBC, or you curated one in 2021, I think, and it was about the ideas to reconstruct America. And let me ask you this in the context of what we're seeing happen now with Donald Trump heading back to the White House, and you know, Elon Musk playing the kind of role that he is playing as far as policy making is concerned. How do you see this? Do you believe that this is going to be a transformative period for America specifically, and, you know, what happens in America impacts the rest of the world? How are you reading the changes today?
Yeah, I've always been so interested in, you know, America's progress and some of the big ideas that have come out in American history. You know, because we're a democracy, we're not sort of centrally planned, but that doesn't mean that there aren't sort of big animating ideas in American history. Whether that was, you know, FDR, for example, or Reagan, they both had big ideas that really sort of changed the trajectory of America for decades that followed their presidencies. And so I think it's too early to say whether we're in one of those periods again right now, but I do think there is a hunger in the United States for a new vision, for a new big idea for what the future could look like. And I think one of the reasons why it's interesting you mentioned Elon Musk is one of the things America has done really well over the past 250 or so years is innovate. And I think if you look back to, you know, the period of time before America was founded, life expectancy was half what it was today. GDP per capita had stagnated for thousands of years. And I think the innovation that has come out of the United States has played a really important role globally. And so I do think it's important that that continues, that we continue this incredible arc of progress that the United States has been a part of, but also countries around the world have participated in, that I think has really been driven by, you know, democratic ideals and the idea that great ideas can come from anywhere. And we should really support entrepreneurship and innovation to drive productivity.
Well, you know, I mean, as you pointed out, America continues to be at the forefront as far as innovation is concerned, as well as entrepreneurship. I mean, you know, all the large tech platforms that we're talking about here are based in the U.S. What more do you think needs to be done to revive capitalism for what capitalism was known as, which was creative destruction? And do you believe that, you know, Musk and this efficiency commission and, you know, all of that is going to be able to cut the bureaucratic red tape and really allow more innovation and entrepreneurship to flourish?
Yeah, it's too early to predict, I think, what the outcome will be there. But I think Elon does have a real track record of innovating. And if he can bring that innovative mindset to the American government, I think that that could be really valuable. And certainly there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's, you know, in rethinking education, for example. Our education system was developed about 100 years ago really for factory jobs, right, to prepare people for factory work. We haven't thought a lot about what it looks like, you know, today in the modern economy to need to work together on a team, to come up with creative ideas, and how can we sort of remap the education system to support the things that are most valued in today's workplace. I think healthcare is another great opportunity where we saw some leaps forward, certainly coming out of the pandemic and things like telehealth, but there's so much opportunity to, I think, drive more, you know, efficiency in healthcare, but also deliver better health outcomes. So there's so much opportunity to make a positive impact, and, you know, hopefully Elon will be hard at work on those opportunities.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this script plays itself out. But let's go back to talking about Snap, and I want to get you know, to understand your lessons from the listing experience and what that's taught you and what you would like to share with Indian entrepreneurs who are looking at a potential listing at that point in time. At this point in time, I mean, the process, the journey to listing, and then the learnings post listing to deal with the volatility, to deal with the scrutiny. What's that been like for you?
I think that sort of pressure is really healthy for the business as long as you're committed to keeping an eye on the long term and communicating transparently with investors about what that journey looks like. And we've always shared our focus on augmented reality, our belief in our AR glasses, and we wanted to go on that journey with investors. But I think it's easier said than done to talk about the long term, but to actually live the long-term commitment is I think a challenge. And I'm sure there's so much incredible entrepreneurial energy here in India, and I think just making sure that folks don't get too focused on the quarter to quarter and instead think about the long-term impact that they can create in the world. It's just critically important.
So let me end by asking you about India. You've got a great team here that you put in place with Pulkit, and of course the region has Ajit. Any targets that you've set for them in terms of where you would like this business to be and the role that you see India playing for Snap globally?
We see enormous opportunity here. One of the things I'm most excited about is the way that Indian entrepreneurs are creating new augmented reality experiences. And so in addition to, of course, all the growth goals we have in terms of the application and growing the community, of course, growing revenue, I think India can really be a place that embraces augmented reality and helps build that future together with us. So that's something that I'm really excited about here.
Well, Evan, we look forward to seeing you back in India. We wish you the very best of luck with your plans here and globally. And it's been great speaking with you here on the Global Dialogue.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate your time. Well, with that, it is time for us to take a break here on the Global Dialogue, but we will return with more conversations. Till then, from all of us here on the team, goodbye and thanks for watching.